unlike the consumer internet era where I could come up with an app without really spending that much time on R&D or collaborating with a research center at IIT Bombay, it seems you want to build an AI startup. It seems that research has to be a fundamental leg of the work you do. Why is that?
I would say that China has certainly showed the way. DeepSeek movement required at least a decade of investment, and the academia actually made a significant contribution.
Today, I'm excited to have with us Professor Ganesh Ramakrishnan. Professor Ganesh Ramakrishnan is professor at IIT Bombay, serves as the principal investigator of BharatGen, a government-backed effort led by a consortium of top Indian research and educational institutions to develop generative AI models for India. Recently, Forbes India and Excel recognized Ganesh amongst the top 30 Indian minds in AI globally. He's also been recognized among the top 100 most influential global leaders in AI.
I don't think resource constraint is always a negative, because as I said, necessarily the mother of invention. A marriage between engineering and research plays a very important role. It's very important to move away from this term Jugaad.
Two or three fundamental differences that you see between the Indian research ecosystem and some of the other ecosystems.
One big difference between China and India. The effort here has been a very participatory, whereas some of the other initiatives have been very top-down. China's vaccine, understanding.
What are those things that are needed to be done more to bring some of that talent back?
So, whole of nation approach is required to get back some good talent into India. The industry in the US has always viewed research as investment and that mindset. How do you bring that here? In India, I would certainly say a lot of AI, the credit goes to the consumer. India has embraced AI. The biggest catalysts for innovation in AI today are in users.
Ganesh, we are really excited to have you with us here today on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. Very honored to be featured on this podcast. Thank you, Anirudh.
So Ganesh, I want to start us off with a broad question, as I try and do usually on our conversations, which is, you come from the field of academia and research. You're of course working on multilingual, multimodal models, BharatGen, which we'll get into. But for those who have actually seen the wave of consumer internet over the last 10, 15, 20 years, I come from the world of venture capital, where the last 20 years has been about tech startups, internet startups, mobile apps, etc., what the world has seen. What is different about the age of AI? Why is academia, research, R&D much more important in this age versus maybe the age of consumer internet that we'd seen? For the students watching or for entrepreneurs watching this, fundamentally, could you compare for us why this current phase of, let's say, potential entrepreneurship in the world of AI will likely depend? It seems that that's the mainstream understanding, that unlike the consumer internet era where I could come up with an app without really spending that much time on R&D or collaborating that much, let's say, with a research center at IIT Bombay, it seems like that in the world of AI, if you want to build an AI startup that has a moat, that has something interesting or unique to offer the world, it seems that research has to be a fundamental leg, right, of the work you do. Why is that?
I would say that China has certainly shown the way. I mean, the DeepSeek movement required at least a decade of investment. And then when you say investment, it is research investment, right? The academia actually made a significant contribution. Coming back to picture of expert, it isn't that picture of expert weren't well known, right? But having an ecosystem where the engineers and researchers got together and make a mixture of expert work at scale, and basically also brought down the model size, make the small model as effective as some of the OpenAI endpoints they're providing. I think that's a testimony to how that research plus engineering ecosystem helped startup, because you are not doing a 10%, 20% improvement. There's an order of magnitude difference that you bring, right? I would still believe this is just the tip of the iceberg, what DeepSeek has shown and that ecosystem has shown. Now the provenance is not just at the level of the model development, even the data, right? How do you attribute? I was with the Honorable PM on 8th Jan, and one of the very important points he made is, if you think of population scale, we should think of people not just as being consumers but also producers. And when they contribute to the ecosystem in terms of their data, one example I always give is when BharatGen we started accumulating speech data, 13,000 hours of speech data in our initial stages. We had to work with 5 vendors. And what was very interesting is the iterations we went through to ensure that the speech data we got had good quality, had diversity, veracity, right? And that required an agentic platform. So we had to evolve an agentic platform for managing the data very organically.
And Ganesh, if I could also ask you to maybe lay out for us, given the vantage point you sit at, you've done many collaborations across industry at, as you were mentioning at IBM and others. Give us your assessment of where India's AI, academia and research ecosystem stands vis-a-vis maybe other countries in the world. Strengths, weaknesses, what are we getting right? What do we still need to work on?
Again, I recap from my conversation with the Honorable PM on Jan 8th. What really struck me is his trust and confidence in the people of India. The people of India have embraced AI and its usage without fear. I think that's a big takeaway. That's a big win for us. But how do you convert this approach, this positive outlook, into an advantage is something that needs to be discussed at the highest strategic levels. Okay? How do you use this to help produce IP from India, right? And not just make people IP consumers? So while there's a positive, the positive I see is embracing and the general focus of the India AI Impact Summit, right? The impact part also resonates very closely with the fact that people have embraced AI. The fact that the 7 pillars of the India AI mission, each of them have seen significant progress. Obviously, BharatGen has had a major contribution in the pillar corresponding to foundational model building, the largest recipient there. I think the velocity is high. That's the key. The velocity is very high. There's a lot of energy. Now, I also talk about some of the challenges. The challenge part is, again, I would say largely a mindset issue. I don't think it can be turned into an advantage if we just acknowledge, right? The challenge basically has been that we've been very services driven for large part, right? I mean, I would say infra today is also very services driven, right? Even semiconductors, sometimes we land up, expecting that everything is through contracts or, So can we go beyond that into a mood of research not viewed as expenditure, but as investment, as the Honorable DRDO chief pointed out, right? If you can, Mr. Kawat said, we need to start looking at research as investment. Yes, it should not become investment into a white elephant. It should really be research that is the investment that is seen productively. Now that brings me to BharatGen. That's exactly why we set up BharatGen. We didn't want the academia to be at an arm's distance from a completely commercial revenue-generating entity. So BharatGen is set up as a Section 8 company, a not-for-profit company based out of IIT Bombay. This company is owned by IIT Bombay with the complete blessings and the representation of the India mission. We have one of our boards, Mr. Safirullah, board directors. He is a director also in India mission. So the reason we built this is we wanted the government, we wanted the academia and a professional entity, a Section 8 company with its own CEO, running and working very closely together by design. Right? So this is not just one IIT, there are actually 9 of us. Right? So this is IIT Kanpur, IIT Hyderabad, IIIT Hyderabad, IIT Mandi, IIT Madras, Professor Kamakoti. He's been a big champion of BharatGen, of sovereign models. We also have IIM Indore, so it's very interesting. Talking of diversity, right? IIM Indore has played a very pivotal role. The faculty members there and the team there in going to many of the second tier cities and having communications, dialogues with those libraries, etc., which are custodians of data, and creating the mindset that this data actually can be a catalyst for co-designing solutions. Right? Don't just give us data. We work with you to help design solutions with you. So this mindset, right, that data can help us generate IP. Of course, we also have recently IIT Kharagpur, and IIT Delhi were joined this consortium. So the strength we see, the diversity of IITs, and IITs and IIMs, which are kind of geographically distributed. As point number one, the variety that we try to bring also to the research perspective. Not all of them work on language alone. Some work on optimization, some work on the infra. There's a lot of interest in bridging the infra with the LLM workload, for example. And again, because compute is at a premium, so you need to make sure that your design of experiments are also very meaningful. So again, engineering, marriage between engineering and research plays a very important role in ensuring that the design of experiments is again done in a way that is practical. Resource allocation needs to be also done. So a lot of the resource allocation is happening to the section and company. I must tell you, this is at least the many important positive lessons from this engagement, which I would like to share with the global south, because you had brought this up. Many of these lessons might be very relevant to situations which are resource constrained, right? And I don't think resource constraint is always a negative, because as I said, necessity the mother of invention. If you didn't have a resource constraint, you would go down a path of unsustainability. So I think this marriage is very important to ensure that we think frugally, right? And we bring science and not Jugaad. I think it's very important to move away from this term Jugaad. And Jugaad happens when the engineering is dissociated from the science, from research.
And so if I could, I think that's a great point that you're making, that this idea of being resource constrained to begin with and then still pursuing scientific research, scientific innovation, right? And bringing the research and engineering arms together through a collaborative multi-institution effort, as you're describing BharatGen to be, seems to be a great lesson that one can say that Indian academic research and the initiatives like BharatGen could share with the global south. But let's go into specific constraints also, right? So I think world over the conversation has been that countries like the US and let's say to a large extent China that don't have capital constraints and don't have, let's say, talent constraints and don't have data constraints to a large extent are basically going down this path where they're trying to build larger and larger LLMs, larger and larger models, backed by larger and larger AI data centers, consuming more and more energy, right? Investing, we've gone from a few $1 billion of investment scale to hundreds of billions of dollars, and now you're starting to hear trillions of dollars over a certain time frame. On one side, you have this model being offered of more and more and more and bigger and bigger and bigger. You are saying that BharatGen and the work you're doing is not saying that. The assumption is very clearly very different, that let's figure out the constraints and solve for those constraints. So talk to us about the data constraint. How are you solving the data constraint? Because I think, again, these problems will be very relevant for countries across the global south, not just India. Data constraint, let's say top tier research talent constraint, and compute constraint, and let's say capital constraint.
Thank you. Maybe we'll go in the same order, start with data. With due credit to the team from IIM Indore and several other partnerships we have, both across state and the central government, we've been very fortunate that we've been able to get data with consent. I think it's very key here. Now, the data might have a heavy tail distribution, right? There's a head that most people have picked up, right? The tail part is where we see India has a lot of data distributed, and the Gyan Bharatam initiative, the Honorable PM again has been very emphatic about, is again part of that. There's a lot of data, manuscripts data that is spread across. And there are people who are willing to engage, work. For example, we've been trying to provide a service to many of these manuscript entities. That, well, we'll help you we'll get you the completely machine readable output cleaned up. If you desire, you can share back the data with us, right? So the trust part has been very critical here. And there have been many who have actually reposed that trust. Of course, that also is because we are sovereign, we are completely government funded, as you would know, and that will be the fourth point. So the data part, yes, there is challenge. But we have also piggybacked on several of our own prior initiatives. For example, the document translation work that I was leading in the name of Udaan, where we worked extensively also with many entities that needed their content, books translated into multiple Indian languages. Right? We use, and again, the translation effort there was based on provenance. We had a knuckle paper last year where we actually released benchmarks where we also maintained this correlation across tasks across multiple languages. Right? You can have question answering in one language, question answering in another language, and those the two can be completely unrelated. But the more relationship you bring amongst them, right, more alignment you bring amongst them, the easier it will be to do apples comparison as against apple oranges comparison. So I think the point here is provenance in data, in translation, in optical character recognition, trust-based relationships, and respecting the heavy-tail distribution. That every entity matters. It's not just about the quantity; it's also the quality of data. Because the quality of data also reflects in the engagement, right? Engagement of respect. I brought up this point earlier. I'll bring it back. Often data can be a strong catalyst for co-designing solutions, right? While that holds for government entities, also equally holds for private entities. I mean, many of the banks are custodians of good quality data. Now, that good quality data could actually help result in co-designing solutions. It could be retrieval augmented based solutions. It could actually also mean that some of the data is used in the post-training of our foundational models for their specific use cases. So I think turning these data opportunities into partnerships also is a very important component of this strategy, especially when it comes to B2B engagement, right? Business to business engagement, which has also been our large forte so far. That's our focus. I mean, if you want these solutions to run in air gap situations, obviously, the data cannot leave the premise, and that also leads to co-design solutions. This holds for strategic engagements as well. So that's point response to the first, which is data. In addition to some of the earlier points I made about provenance.
On the data piece, could I also ask Ganesh? So one is that you're working with, as you're mentioning, museums or places that have manuscripts and archives that you could help digitize and then make machine readable, etc. But what about data sitting in the private sector in India? What's the progress that you've been able to make on that, to work with private sector firms to unlock data that might be sitting within large tech firms in India or startups in India that have access to a lot of data, or even let's say our telecom firms that might have a lot of data, or our food delivery firms or UPI data. So a lot of this kind of data that's sitting out there, that's not the historical data, let's say, but other kinds of data. How have you managed to make progress on maybe on the partnerships front on that?
Right. So that brings me to the partnership aspect. Now, I already alluded to this somewhat when I said that data could be converted into an opportunity, a catalyst for co-designing solutions, right? While AI Kosh, the initiative from the India mission, has been excellent, right? I mean, the access control there, who gets what data, we make requests, things start percolating down. And I've also come across many private entities who have pushed their data to AI Kosh. So AI Kosh itself has been a great exercise, just bringing visibility to what exists. At the same time, many of these, for example, when we brought out a whole bunch of benchmarks for finance, so we released small models for finance, for legal, for Ayurveda, and for agriculture. So we released these 4 smaller models along with a slightly larger model, but the models were also released with their own benchmarks. And these were based on publicly available data. Many entities approached us, banks approached us, saying like, well, you've done a great job, but we have, as you said, we hold a lot of data which is not public. Can we look at areas at the intersection of what we have and what you've been able to curate as benchmarks and as models to see what we can do further, right? So I think this combination of showing our capability, putting things out as digital public good, catalyzing this discussion at the level of these enterprises and creating partnerships. This is a continuous process for us. And we'll continue releasing more digital public goods. And we are only confident that that will result in more such dialogues, more such partnerships. Now, since the partnerships also need to see a very tangible outcomes with timelines, that is exactly where the company plays a very critical role, right? So there are, we have people who are actually looking at business engagement in these partnerships as business engagements, right? And not just because a lot of the business engagements become timelines and deliverables. that is why the company plays a very critical role. Even if it is not for profit, revenues always will come, right? Even from a government perspective. The other aspect of these data partnerships, or what I talked about, making these are kind of inviting participation, is our movement towards the larger models. So the India AI Mission has also funded us to build models up to 1 trillion parameters. So far we've been releasing text language models up to 7 billion, now going to 17 billion. We have several LLM-enabled speech models, text-to-speech models. Several of them are out. More will be coming during the Impact Summit. Our North Star, right, our runway basically goes to 1 trillion parameters. Now, why is that important? Why that has a strategic significance from the point of view of capability of large models, right? That also has an implication on these data partnerships, because these large models have the tool calling capability. And these tools will invariably be very, very organization, enterprise specific, right? And these are the tools that are also be able to read out that ingress of enterprise data, which typically otherwise would not be made accessible. The other advantage of having these larger models is from large models you can distill out small models in very much the same way that OpenAI distilled out GPT OSS from its larger models, which actually became very competitive, right? Because they had access to they had visibility, the recipes associated with the large model. So having the recipes of model development, the large model inclusive, the recipes of agentic behavior are very critical to also build a confidence in the enterprises about partnering for creating assets out of the data, which include tools, which include smaller models as well. So this brings me to the answer to the second question, right? This needs capability. I mean, not just engineering capability, not just research capability, also business capability. And that's exactly where, again, our company has played a very critical role. While academia can keep exploring, pushing the frontiers of what is possible next, to translate that possibility in that potential into actual tangible output, you need people who can understand business and technology both. So, for example, Chief Product Officer Kaustubh, he was a faculty of engineering tech. He spent decades in industry abroad, and he is now with BharatGen as a Chief Product Officer. Dr. Amol Gite, he is heads the VP operations, a lot of the AI translational effort. Again, he spent a significant amount of time at the intersection of healthcare and AI prior to being here. Our CEO, Mr. Rishi Bal, a very glaring example of, he basically spent 2.5 decades with Google Research and Microsoft, largely out of Seattle. And he worked with the product team there, right? So I think that capability, and the reason it matters is, let's acknowledge that in India, while we've had excellent software and engineering capability, it has been largely focused on services, right? But bring the same, you just turn the lens, right? You bring the software engineering capability, the development capability into creating assets, into creating your own IP, right? It's a strategic, it's a very different strategic viewpoint. So these people are able to bring that. I'm very, very glad that we made some progress. Of course, we also have our VPML, Dr. Manish Singh, who will be joining soon. He's already joined actually. He's just moving back. He got his OCI cleared, right? So I'm very grateful to the Indian ambassador to the US for helping. He's been actually quite helpful in ensuring we get some of them back and with the least amount of hassles. So you can see it's a whole of government approach, it's a whole of nation approach, right? That's required to get back some good talent into India. And there's a need for such talent because of this perspective, right? I mean, in the industry in the US has always viewed research as investment, and because of that, that mindset is also percolated into the development, the engineers sitting there. How do you bring that here, that positive culture here? In addition to the best practices from China, which we talked about, having the academia work closely with the industry. So we'll really bring the best lessons from all around the world, right? We have no problem, but it has to be with a bit of osmosis. So ultimately, it should not become oil floating on water. It should very nicely gel in our system. So that's That's the job of osmosis that we are also doing at BharatGen. We need to be grounded in Indian culture, in Indian thoughts, Indian needs, and yes, constraints, which is where we began, right? Constraints which are very realistic and possibly are exemplars for the world. So this is the second, my humble response to the second question. We are making an earnest call that for more of our well-wishers to join back in whatever capacity. IIT Bombay through its Heritage Foundation, thanks to the support from the director, the entire team has been absolutely supportive at IIT Bombay for this initiative. So we went an extra, like we actually had a road show in the US a couple of months back, championed directly by our director and the leadership team here. I was also there, and we made an appeal to the diaspora, the IIT Bombay alumni, sitting in some of these very, very sought after destinations, right, which are the Googles and the Microsofts and LinkedIn's and so on, right? NVIDIA's as well, right? So they've been very kind. They realize the potential India holds. They also have a strong feeling towards making this successful for India. And they found ways and means of course, referring people to us, but they also have provided insights and strategic insights into what could be done, what could not be done, what will be helpful, and so on. So as you can see, this is going to require whole of nation approach, not sitting within India alone. But the reason I bring this up is China started the 1,000 Scholars Return program again a decade back. So you need that message to go out. Again, some humble beginnings have been made. A lot needs to be done.
And so, if I could ask you, on the piece that you say, more needs to be done. You've been in meetings with the Honorable Prime Minister. Of course, you have the AI mission directors on your board as well, including Mr. Safirullah and others. What are those things that are needed to be done more, right, to bring some of that talent back that you're talking about? In addition to, of course, appeals, right? As you rightly said, you can make the appeals, you can tell them that, okay, here's the kind of exciting work that's been done. But what are those 2 or 3 other things that you think need to be done differently to attract maybe greater numbers of that talent back, so that our perspective can again change to that strategic IP-driven perspective that you are advocating?
Excellent question, and I kind of quote Mr. Safirullah in a point he brought up in a meeting with the chairman of the IIT Bombay Heritage Foundation, where he met them in New York. He said, we need to create strong processes, right? All these are examples I provided, and we need to translate learnings from these examples, experiences thereof, into processes. Now, what are the processes? What are the desirables from such a process? Seamless integration of, people with the desired. We hunt people, but we need to fund them, right? But the funding part is not just the fund in terms of the paycheck, but the fund is also in terms of ensuring that they have a good experience. They could be offered 2 body problems, right? So how do you ensure that both of them are able to relocate in a satisfactory manner, create some win-win solution? Right? So I think we need processes that help them situate themselves strongly here. Along with that, we also need to respect the strength and the mindset they bring in. Again, if we get the product-oriented mindset and fit into a services pipeline, right? We'll again have
the talent will very quickly go back. Correct. No, there are talent
exactly.
Go back.
So the message needs to. So I think message has to go out from the top, and this is an appeal. Right, message has to go out that India is ready for. The budget has announced this as well, that we need to go deep tech and we want to invest into research. Here we are ready. Yes, there's a need for some patience both ways. Right, the ecosystem doesn't transform overnight. I'll give my example here. So, why should I talk about anyone else? Myself, I did my bachelor's at IIT Bombay, 1996 to 2000, CS, right? And I was to go to CMU for a PhD. Got an offer from there. I was inspired by some wonderful people back here who said, well, the question that will affect, I said that I plan to go and come back, and I was asked to, everyone says like that, are you sure? So, and I stayed back. And thanks to my advisors here, thanks to, again, the ITB ecosystem, I was provided fertile ground Yet I did see the challenges. I have to be patient with something that possibly has been, whatever it is for legacy reasons, right? So it doesn't change overnight. So that patience is also required. My appeal would be that while we create that, appeal not to the diaspora, but appeal to also the those who can actually create such a system, processes, like Mr. Safirullah very rightly said, make it a pleasant experience. Let's create that pleasant experience back in India as well as I stay back here. And in that process also find ways and means of helping create an ecosystem around them. Because you can't have leaders come and station here without an ecosystem around them. There's also a big need, I must say, of people who are in their mid-careers, right? So there are lots of interesting programs that have come out for example, faculty, right? Faculty from US universities and elsewhere to come back or spend some time here. But people, engineers with, let's say, a decade or two of experience are also very valuable here. So we need to create processes for them as well. Yeah, I think there are also possibilities that the equivalent of the 1,000 Scholars Return program may help create good partnerships or avenues of collaborating with universities in the US and elsewhere, right? To work on problems that are grounded in Indian context. Because many of those problems will have global appeal, certainly appealing to the global south.
Yeah. So we've now spoken about the data constraint and how you're tackling that, talent constraint and how you're tackling that, or how further processes need to be set up also for that. Let's talk about the energy constraint or the compute constraint as well. Is your sense that the other approach, which is the one you are taking, compared to the mainstream approach right now, the bigger and bigger LLMs and more energy guzzling data centers powering these LLMs, etc., is your sense that this approach of the more efficient compute, more efficient data constraint, is your sense that this will inevitably become the mainstream, or do you see some very significant challenges being mounted by the mainstream against, let's say, your approach today?
Thank you. So I have two responses to this question. One is with the existing infra, right? In all earnestness to address this problem of data efficiency and compute efficiency, we brought out an open source platform around 10 years back, when we at least 8 years back, called Decile, DECILE.org. So Decile expands as data efficient learning. And we brought out libraries that can do subset selection, for example. If you have a large amount of data, what's the right subset of that data that might be good enough for an application? It can be target driven, it can be diversity based, it can be based on good representation, right? You want to be fair. Just because my workload doesn't have enough Manipuri, does it mean that I don't factor enough Manipuri into my model? No, right? I want to have diversity, I want to have representation, right? So we brought out all of this in this package called Decile.org. And we also brought in some very interesting paradigms for data programming. Everything doesn't have to be machine-based efficiency. Some of the efficiency may come by encoding programs, our knowledge, in the form of complex programs, right? Very often the annotation that gets reflected in annotation guidelines, right, for annotators are those that can be written in the form of programs. So a very close analog of this data programming is something called Snorkel that came out from Stanford. So we got very inspired by that, but we said, well, can we bring data selection in conjunction with data programming? And the data program, can they actually help override the human model output, right? So that's one thread, right? And by the way, I'm very happy to share also that one of the startups of which I'm a co-founder called BBS AI adopted exactly this line of thinking. My co-founder, Mr. Ganesh Ramakrishnan, has been, very, very much adhering to this principle of being data efficient, right? Being able to run simple, small models for large-scale enterprises. So that's one thing, right? Data efficient learning. And we continue to publish papers. We just had a bunch of papers last year and this year. We'll keep doing that. And we do that as part of BharatGen as well. Now let me go to a slightly more fundamental approach to frugality and data efficiency and compute efficiency. And to me, that is a very strong collaboration between the LLM, sovereign LLM effort and the infra, right? So as a simple example, If what Google does with Broadcom, if you could create an ecosystem here where our workloads, BharatGen workloads, the lessons we have every day, every single day, as we train on large number of nodes, there's so many lessons we learn. Now, one way is we do some engineering, change some hyperparameters, right? Change some configuration libraries, and try and squeeze out the best we can from the current stack. But we could do something remarkably differently if our workloads can go into ASIC design, right? And that obviously means that we need ecosystem partners in the country. I mean, this is again basically call for participation, call for standing up to this very big possibility. If India could move towards becoming a compute capital for the global south by working towards its own ecosystem stack for training. That's one. But inference is the biggest thing. Today, how do you even cater to Indian population scale with the inference workload that will be entailed, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity for a very strong collaborative effort between sovereign LLM and its workloads, right? And we getting feedback from such partners would be very natural, right? We should also do the best we can. Currently, there's been great participation from entities, existing chip providers, but I think from India perspective, from global south perspective, I feel the other part, which is this handshake between workloads and infra, right? The infra stack, which is of multiple layers, which I will not get into right now, but starting with just ASICs, might be a very solid opportunity for India. And given the announcements that were made also as part of the budget, the investments for semiconductors, this might also be an opportune moment for the Indian industry to step up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And other announcements regarding, even the tax breaks for data centers and cloud infrastructure, etc., all feeds into that AI infrastructure piece that you are referring to. Ganesh, this has been great. I want to now change tack and talk a little bit more about India and Global South collaboration. You've already started alluding to that piece, but given that that's a big thread that's coming up in the India AI Impact Summit, where this is the first Impact Summit, or first AI Summit rather, being held in the Global South, the others having been in Seoul, the UK, and Paris. Talk to us about how you see further collaboration between India and the other countries in the Global South panning out. Where can India be helpful or valuable if there were more partnerships between India and other Global South countries? And where do you see India deriving value from other countries in the Global South? And what could be those dimensions on which the collaboration could be furthered?
So first of all, there are several initiatives in the Global South which possibly come close to the effort of BharatGen. So it's very important to share lessons, right? At least from a BharatGen perspective, obviously, one can have a wider, India ecosystem perspective as well. But I think even from there, that perspective, it's good to have very focused discussions with partners there. Singapore has a Sea Lion initiative. Japan has a Japan LRGP. Malaysia has something similar. And in fact, a few months back, there was actually a get-together of some of these Global South initiatives, foundation LLM builders in Malaysia. So I think it'd be great to have these interactions, lessons on how we structure this entire initiative. How can we collaborate? What would be the next natural step beyond just learning lessons? The other important part is diversity, right? How do you turn this diversity into a strong strategic advantage for us? How do you also discover the underlying integral unity, right? Integral unity underlying this diversity. I'll give you an example. From our consortium, we brought out this book called Samanvay. Professor Aina Bhattacharya and several other faculty have been part of it. Now, what was the idea behind the book Samanvay? Leveraging the commonality of Indian languages. Right? So, while I talked about phonetic similarity, I mentioned that when we talk about the speech projectors, but there's phonemes, there's a lot of phonetic similarity across Indian languages. I am a Tamil speaker. We may say that the Tamil vocabulary is somewhat different from the vocabulary of some other languages. It might have not been the case a couple of decades back. So languages do move in their vocabulary. We use a lot of English code mixing even when we speak Hindi. So while there is significant lexical similarity, what cannot be denied is the structural similarity of Indian languages, right? So that's what we bring out in this book called Samambay, the structural similarity. While English is largely subject, verb, object, Indian languages are largely subject, object, verb. Right? And you take very complex sentences, you can and group words together, you actually find remarkably similar structure. Now, in going beyond this, like imagine doing the same thing with Global South. Can the next generation of models, be not just respectful to this fact, but leverage this through the entire DNA of the model, right? The architecture itself. So I think there's a lot that can be done with the Global South. Another very important place where I think the Global South could come together is also securing compute. Right? Malaysia is, for example, trying to move towards a sovereign infra. Japan has some effort, and I'm sure many countries will try to follow suit. Again, learning lessons from each other we need to secure our infra, right? Both training, but even more importantly, inference. I would say that because that's where you can actually reach out and sustain your AI tools, your goods for usage by people at large. Fourth dimension, where I think the collaboration will be very strong, is startups, the startup ecosystem, the way research is being viewed. Going back to your first question, right? Can startups today, thrive for long without acknowledging the roots of research, right? How have these other countries gone about doing it? So I think there's a lot of cross-pollination that can also happen on making these startup ecosystem successful in strong collaboration with research, right? Based on the lessons learned.
Yeah. No, I think all great suggestions and very practical ones. Also, Ganesh, if they can, I think, be taken up and worked upon, I think those could again be great avenues for collaboration between India and the Global South. Which leads me to my next question, which is, what are your expectations from the India AI Impact Summit? What are pieces that you hope will come out of it? And what do you hope as some of the outcomes from the summit?
So thanks. I'm just going to say that charity begins at home. So while the India Impact Summit is a great opportunity for us to get exposure to the Global South and to the impact of AI across the world, I think there's some excellent work that's going on within the country itself. For me to see states coming together. So I'm on a panel discussion with Maharashtra state has actually invited me in that panel discussion. We've been discussing a lot with several other states as well. And there's a lot of learning, right? The way these states are trying to implement, the way we can play a role, right, as part of the ecosystem here. That's one. But the other is also across, different services. The armed services, for example. I'm again on a panel with the Deputy Chief of Army. Very grateful for that opportunity. But now, how have the different in the drive services? How have we adopted AI? What are the learnings across? So I think there's immense potential for cross pollination even within. Both the foot soldiers of AI in this country as well as the strategic thinkers, right? Who could get this input to make more informed decisions. So I see this as a great opportunity for India, right? Just getting people together. Besides, of course, learning from the best practices elsewhere.
No, great. Let me now move to our rapid fire segment, Ganesh, where I'm going to ask you a few quick questions in rapid succession and short answers or brief answers from your end. So I'm going to start off with some rapid fire questions around the research ecosystem that we've been discussing, and then we'll move on to some more pieces. So in a nutshell, Ganesh, if you were talking to students who are thinking about coming into a IIT or an ISC or any other educational institution in India over the coming years, why would you tell them, or why should they pursue a career in research?
AI has only made the close connection between research. The boom in AI has exposed that research can immediately translate into impact. And I've been a witness to this through my journey from BTech to PhD and until today as a faculty. So I think, as I say, you can see the results. So the phal is all here.
Which of the, if you were to characterize the top three research ecosystems in the world, which would those be?
I would put China right there at the top. I'm still trying to figure out the second, but there are many names that come. US, of course, US is slightly different, right? Japan, Malaysia, Japan certainly comes, Singapore comes close. And India, of course. So India, I think, thanks to the trust of the Department of Science and Technology, I must acknowledge, right? In India, this another good thing I experienced with BharatGen is that ministries came together. Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Information Technology, MIT, and of course Ministry of Education. All of them came together and said, let's work. So it's a whole government approach. I would say is a very important reason why India is also standing out as a very good example. I think, as Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav said, right there at the top, there is India. Yeah.
Two or three key differences or fundamental differences that you see between the Indian research ecosystem as it's evolving very rapidly, as you rightly said, and some of the other ecosystems that you've referenced that are at the very top. Two or three fundamental differences that still exist.
I think one big difference between, say, China and India, at least, right? The effort here has been a very participative, bottom up and top down. Both of them have played a role. Whereas I feel some of the other initiatives have been very top down. I mean, China, so that's the understanding I gave, right? Which works in the immediate future, but in the long term, you also need people enthused, right? So you need good, happy culture of people wanting to contribute. So I think India has kept that up, and that's the reason. I mean, initiatives like ours, which there was a pull and push both, right? We pulled for support, and there's a push from the top to help enable. So I think that's our strength. But yes, as I say, that strength comes with the challenge that we may be slow, apparently slower, right? In adoption of technology and also innovation wise slower. So in computer science there's no free lunch. So this is what we are getting. We get a more democratic system, but that can apparently slow us down.
Correct. Always trade-offs. Correct. Let's now move to a different kind of set of questions that are in our rapid fire format, which is about LLMs. I know a lot of your research focuses on LLMs, as we've been discussing. Three human traits that you think AI models, LLM models, are adopting very rapidly.
Attribution, reasoning, seamless interoperability across modalities. These are the three traits.
Three traits of human beings that the LLMs don't seem to be adopting that fast.
Yeah, frugality. Yeah, I mean, we are frugal. We don't take so much data to learn, right? Frugality in data. I mean, we are separate the two: frugality in data and frugality in compute. And we seem to be ages apart, the human and the machines, right? These two stand out. I would also say the frugality in cooperative exercise, right? So, I mean, humans can work together easily. There may be challenges, but you know how to set up dialogues. It's taking so much of an effort to get machines work closely with humans. So, right, just empathizing, the empathy part seems to be maybe the difference. So, frugality in data, frugality in compute, and empathy.
What's more important, according to you, for a country like India and even for other countries in the global south, AI innovation or AI adoption and diffusion?
I would say both. I don't want to.
I asked you which one. No, I know, but still, if you had to pick one, I understand both would be ideal. But if you had to pick one, which one would you pick as the more important one?
Innovative adoption. If I may put this adjective.
Which countries' evolution of research ecosystems in the recent 5 years have you been impressed with the most?
Certainly China.
One thing that you think India needs to change in its AI strategy?
More cooperation and collaboration rather than competition.
With internally, you mean, or with other countries?
Internally. Internally as well.
More internal. Understood. Okay.
I mean, and associated with that is speed, agility. So cooperation, collaboration, and agility and speed. That's of critical importance in this space.
Let's now move to some applications of AI and questions around that. Which application of AI are you most excited about in the coming year or two?
I'm most excited about anything that touches an ordinary citizen. So I would say citizen-centric, governance-based, right? Citizen-centric applications. Because as
More delivery of services, or would you argue like education or healthcare, or more delivery of traditional government services?
I include all those domains, education, healthcare. See, I as a common user, my needs are often not siloed as healthcare versus education. We want education as part of healthcare, right? So my needs are often very laterally spanning multiple domains. So making them silos probably is a convenience we as technology developers find, but as an end user, even a bank, right? If a bank needs a co-pilot, is the co-pilot going to be a banking co-pilot, finance based on finances, right? Financial domain, or should it be a banking co-pilot based on legal? The reality is you need a combination of the two. You need governance as well. So that's the reason. To me, the killer thing is citizen access, right? Citizen satisfaction, which means the ability of models to switch between domains, right? And bring in fewer overheads of what we call as arbitration.
As you see the research agenda evolving, right, in the world of AI, both globally and within India, who seems to be driving it the most? Industry or corporations, companies, governments, or capital investors, or consumers?
In India, I would certainly say a lot of AI, the credit goes to the consumers because, as I pointed out from the Honorable PM, right, India has embraced AI. So a lot of this catalyst, the biggest catalyst for innovation in AI today are the Indian users. And that's why we are big users of very multinational endpoints as well. And I must still bring out a very important point that the Honorable PM made. Can we use this opportunity, right? Not just make people lazy users of AI, right, to get things done quickly, but to also create new skills. So again, I come back to the end users. There's so much fear amongst in the general world population about loss of jobs, right? And we are seeing that even in our campus placements. AI is eating up into placements. So can we use this to create new skills? That's the reason end users matter, because end users, if they can use AI to discover new skills, which can be very complementary to what AI has to offer. You don't lose skills, at the same time you're adding a lot of productivity.
Which researcher in the world of AI, could be within academic institutions or within large company, etc., has inspired you the most?
I think Fei Li has certainly inspired me a lot.
And these are the last two set of questions. We've kept you on the hook for a long time. But last two questions. For listeners of the podcast, what are some books for people interested in the world of AI from various perspectives? It could be research, startup, otherwise. Some books that you'd recommend that they read, and also podcast guests that you'd recommend we have.
So the space is evolving so fast, right? Any book on the building blocks of AI is possibly going to become outdated very soon. Well, very good efforts have been put. So while there are lots of books, I think there's a very fundamental book I still recommend people read on by Dipshi Rani, Elements of Statistical Learning. I would say it's a very nice old textbook. Right, so I would suggest reading getting the fundamentals of math correct is very important here, even as things move fast. In terms of blogs, there are plenty of them, do avail them. But what I also encourage, the third point I would encourage is books that are the intersection of AI and different domains. So a shameless plug here, me and my colleague Kshitij Jadhav, we wrote a book recently on basically talking about informatics and AI for healthcare. That's the book. Informatics and AI for healthcare. Why it's very interesting is in every example that we do for AI, whether it's the transformers as a building blocks, right? Or the entire process of learning, we brought healthcare, and we let healthcare percolate for every example, both in terms of use cases as well as in terms of the models themselves. So I mean, I would encourage people to read that book. It's a labor of love. But at the same time, I would encourage people to write books and possibly create strong collaborations, which would also sow the seed for co-designing. I mean, you need co-design between AI and different verticals. So I hope that serves as a
I
catalyst.
think that's a great recommendation. Yeah. Great recommendations. I think. And what about podcast guests from anywhere in the world or India that you suggest we get?
Oh, I see. Well, I would certainly look forward to listening to one of my favorite mentors in the space, Professor Narendra Ahuja. He is a faculty at UISC, spent a decade in India. He was a founder of IIT Hyderabad. He's been with BharatGen even before we were funded. So his interest in India and its capability for sovereign AI. He is one of the most revered figures in the area of computer vision as professor at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And in fact, one of his students, Dr. Manish Singh, is joined us as VPML. So he has contributed a lot. I would love to hear from him. As I said, he spent more than a decade at MIT some time back, and he did play a very critical role in sowing the seeds of this India AI. So I'd like to hear him on the podcast.
Great. No, thank you for the great recommendations as well, for both books and podcast guests, Ganesh. This has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing the great work that you are doing, of course, at BharatGen and otherwise as a faculty member at IIT Bombay as well, and teaching the next generation of students and researchers in India. And of course, for gleaning out the insights from the work that you're doing and the lessons you're learning as you practice what you preach at the intersection of, government, academia, research, and startups in the form of BharatGen and other initiatives. And thank you for taking the time today, and we look forward to seeing you at the summit.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.